Hi, why is picking the right colors important, and how can you link their meaning to your UI design? In this snippet from one of our recent live events, we'll share just that. One of our UI design mentors, Olga, will talk you through the deeper meaning behind colors and how it applies to your UI design project. Click the link in the description to find out more about upcoming events at CareerFoundry. For weekly videos just like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that bell button. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about UI design or color theory. And now let's dive straight in.
Why the color is important. It's pretty much the biggest motivator in decision making. And research also shows that the users form opinions of a website in about 50 milliseconds. So this is pretty much largely based on visual appearance, where, as you can imagine, color has a huge impact. Then, therefore, it is one of the primary components of the design of a website, of a product, or anything that you can imagine. Pretty much, even before websites existed, we would apply color theory into supermarkets. So that would entice people to get specific products or go into different directions, or make people feel different things in different aisles of a supermarket. Then it's also rooted in cultural learnings, as we will see through some examples. And it sets up the tone and communicates what you want to communicate regarding a product that you're designing. Ultimately, it helps your users to remember the product, and this is what you want to also to convey. So going through red, and this is the strongest and the most energizing color that's ever existed. So it is a color that enhances metabolism and raises our heartbeat and our breathing rate. It prompts a release of adrenaline, stimulates appetite. It is the color that has been mostly researched. It's been proven that even soccer teams that use red outfits win most often. So it grabs a lot of attention. It signifies fire, violence, war, anger, if used in the exaggeration. It's also the color of lust. But if we go to China and the Eastern world, we see it associated with luck. And it's very used, therefore, for traditional weddings in China and India. And nevertheless, in Germany or Nigeria, it's associated with unluckiness. So we see that depending on the context, it's quite different meanings. In China, it is a color that is forbidden at funerals, while in Ghana and South Africa, it is actually the color that you should use for funerals. If we go to the meaning of danger signs, error messages, those are normally depicted in red in UI. It is a powerful accent color, might be quite overwhelming when overused. So it should be used specifically for very important details of the interface. We see that colors have different variations regarding, we calling it only one name. A lot of times they can multiply and seen into different, it's set up with different tones. And depending on the tone, this might also communicate different meanings. So for example, if we pick scarlet, which is a vibrant red that kind of has a hint of orange, it's basically a really vibrant and energetic color. While if we pick burgundy, it's much more elegant and powerful. And then we have colors that are mid through this range, which might have a hint of blue, like crimson or maroon. But if we see them in isolation, they are still seen as red. And this is the important fact that no matter what kind of tint you add to the color, it will still influence the meaning of that color, but you still have the primary meaning as well related to it. So going through orange, it is the vibrance and energy of red combined with the friendliness of yellow. So it is a color that is associated with creativity, adventure, optimism, also quite used for budget applications, for example. We see it used in airlines like EasyJet in Europe, which is associated with cheap travel. Then so this is a meaning that is connotated with the West. But then if we go to Eastern world, it's more about religion and spirituality. So again, here we have very different colors that would signify a much more soft and light tone. And also, if we go to a darker tone, it will actually be associated more with earth and autumn. So depending on the tonality that we give to it, it might lose the vibrancy and go into a more of a different direction. It is a great color for CTAs, for call to actions, and because it is calling a lot of attention, but without being so empowering as red is, or overpowering, in fact. Then we go to yellow, which is the brightest and the most energizing color, at least from the warm colors. It is a color that conveys happiness. Think of the colors of emojis, of the original colors of the original emoji. It was definitely used. It was not by randomly selected that it was yellow. And it is, it also conveys prosperity. But in the Western world, why it is nevertheless used for danger, because it still grabs a lot of attention, but without signifying it so harmfully as red does. It is sacred. It is also royal in the Eastern world, although in Egypt, Myanmar, it's the color of mourning. So if we go to France, it signifies envy and infidelity. And it gives a calm feeling of happiness if we give it a little bit of a lighter tone. So depending, again, on what we want to convey, we might signify very different perspectives where, for example, golden would give a little bit more premium look, while a butter color would give it a more naive tonality. Then going through green, we are combining the attributes of yellow with the blue, which we will see also soon. So there we see balance and we see harmony. It is a color of nature, health, fertility, and abundance. It signifies new beginnings. And depending on the tonality, again, if we go to the lighter tone, we think of the new leaves, which usually are connected to naiveness and youth, while the darker green is more stable and represents affluence or wealth. So it is a color that is quite used for money applications. Then again, as with orange, it is a great color for call to actions. It is related to wealth, stability, renewal, and nature. It's also the color of success messages because of connotation of positive, like you can now walk in the street. It is always the green. So success is usually green. And then we do go to a tonality of blue, which a lot of times is forgotten, but nevertheless, it's still quite as present in the spectrum. And because blue is quite affected, depending on the exact shade and hue, even if you think about that in Russian, there are two words for blue that are completely different. So a light blue will have one word and a dark blue will have a completely different word. So I think that blue is quite different in terms of spectrum of meanings. And we will go through turquoise in specific because it's also very present in our light spectrum of colors. So it does impact what kind of blue you select for the meaning that you want to be perceived. So the lighter blues would be more relaxed, would be more calming. The darker blues would be, or the brightest blue would be more energizing. So turquoise, because it's at lighter tone, it's also friendly and happy. It has a little bit of yellow, so it gives you this hint of happiness into it. It signifies balance and stability. It's peaceful, calming, and has the tranquility of blue, but also the growth of the green, because yellow and blue give you green. So it brings all of these positives together. That's why it's quite used as well in UI and product design. It calms the nervous system, and it also builds confidence. So if we go to tonalities, aqua would be more refreshing, more uplifting. Aquamarine would be more balancing, and a darker turquoise would be trustworthy and more reliable. Going into the blue, and here, as mentioned, it can be quite varied. It is nevertheless consistently an honest and trustworthy, a calm and responsible color. So you will see that in a lot of corporate identities. You will see that in a lot of companies that signify trust and confidence. It also is connected with high quality. Perhaps that's why a lot of technology companies, technology producers use it. It is trustworthy and dependable in the US. In the old Iran, curiously, it's the color of mourning. So nowadays it's not longer used, but it was originally. In the East Asia, it is the color of evil and infidelity. So if we go to lighter tonalities, we see something that is refreshing and friendly. So we use that color for applications like Twitter. But then darker blues like navy are very commonly used for corporate websites or design where strength and reliability are very important to convey. Informational messages are also used in blue, simply because it is a color that is quite basic and primary, and it's still very different from all the other colors that are used for communicating messages like errors in red, warnings in yellow, and success in green. Then, as we heard before, purple, it is a color of wealth and quality, pretty much because of the historical association of how it was produced. That was required a lot of snails in order to produce a very small piece of tissue. So that's what people were using mostly. The colors were on themselves, on the covers that they were putting into their own bodies. So therefore, it is the color of mystery, magic, creativity, imagination. It combines the attribution of red and blue. It is the color of widows in Thailand and evil and infidelity in Japan. Going into tones, light purples would be associated spring romance. So we see that a lot in some colors of the flowers that pop up in the spring, while darker tones like eggplant would be traditionally associated with wealth and luxury. Mostly because this color, when exposed to light and oxygen, would intensify and become even more vibrant and darker. So that's why it was such a royal association as well, because it will not be a color that would fade away. Quite the opposite, will be a color that will become even more intense with age. Then going into pink, it is the little red, but nevertheless, it is a color of love, but more on the sense of naiveness, more on the sense of purity and nurture. Therefore, perhaps it's widely associated with feminism. It signifies hopes. It's connected to trust in Korea. And if we go into a light blush tone, it lacks passion and energy, so it is a little bit more naive. While if we go for salmon with this slight orange tone, it's a little bit more shy but flirty at the same time. It's more youthful. And the rose would be the universal, meaningful love and unity. It's a mature, very feminine and very intuitive color. And the vibrant magenta would be more connected with lust, sensual love, passion, and playfulness. Then going from the real colors to something that I would call the neutral colors, because these are usually colors connected that are not used primarily, but they're usually used as a secondary. So in backgrounds, for text, so we see commonly these neutral colors combined with vibrant colors that will then call our attention to the most important elements. And that said, nevertheless, we can still have an interface based on natural colors, although it's not very common. It's actually much harder as well, because then it takes some effort to call users' attention to the right element. Then we do go for the first color in our traditional neutral colors would be the brown, because it's a very warm neutral. So it is connected to earth, to wood, to stone, to pretty much to all the elements that bring us comfort. And it is quite a reliable and dependable color. In the spectrum of different tonalities, we see colors that are more connected to nature, the darker they are. And this is a really good color to be used for backgrounds. So either beige or dark or very dark brown for typography, for also to bring warmth to your designs. If overused, though, it can actually be quite blunt and boring if the whole interface is based in tonalities of brown. Nevertheless, that's pretty much what we could tell about all of the colors. If you only use one color, it will very likely saturate the user, and there's no diversity, and everything is just very monotone. It requires more effort from the design perspective. So then going through the colors, continuing through neutral colors, the gray is the most neutral color of them all. Is very, very cool. It's also therefore quite conservative, formal. It is widely used in corporate designs and for backgrounds and also typography. So it can be, again, also blunt and boring if overused. But nevertheless, it's also very professional and formal. It can be quite sophisticated. We think of silver. It's also quite typical in corporate designs. Going into white. And here again, don't think that we can still adjust the tonality of the gray and still give a little bit of hint into the color of this gray by adding a little bit of maybe a blue or into a pebble that will be more connected to a stone, or make it a little bit warmer, like the basalt example here. And when we see them in isolation, they will still be seen as grays without having any tonality, but that tonality will somehow be implied in the slight hint that we added to it. In terms of white, it is depending on the region once again. So in the Western world, it is pure and associated with virtue. It signifies rebirth in the East, so it's completely the opposite, and traditionally the only color that the widows would allow to wear in India, because it is associated with death and mourning in the East. It is in the West associated with cleanliness, its simplicity. So we see it quite often in hospitals and medical equipment or medical products, medical applications, etc. Then it's very, very popular in minimalist design. So we see it quite often in Apple products, for example. Then if we look into the scale of gradients, we can again warm up a color or cool it down in order to convey a specific tonality, and in order to also balance other colors that we are using in our UI. So if we use a red or an orange to grab the attention of our users, we might use a snow white with a little bit of hint of blue in order to communicate, in order to balance those warm colors. In the black spectrum, it is the strongest and the most powerful color of all the neutral colors. Because of that, it signifies power, but also elegance. It is associated with evil, death, and mystery. If we think of a book that is called Evil by Design, it is, for example, a very good example how the cover of that book was represented with a completely dark background to signify mystery and to signify evil and death by design. So in the Eastern world, is quite the opposite. It signifies wealth, health, and prosperity. While in Africa, it's connected to age and wisdom. It's also associated with rebellion. And we can think of the Halloween that is quite close to the occult. In avant-garde and elegant designs, if you think of fashion, it is a color that is promptly used for those applications. It can also be conservative or modern, depending how it's used. It can be traditional or unconventional, depending on the colors that you combine them with. So commonly used for typography and any other functional parts because it's so neutral. And again, here we can see that even though it is a color that you can add some shades to it, it still will be very close to, it will not be communicated as anything else but black because it is such an overpowering tone.
I hope this was valuable. Thanks for watching. What other topics should we cover in our live events? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more weekly videos like this. And if you're interested in learning more about UX and UI, we have a free short course for you. You'll find the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.